So welcome. My name is Janet Behrens. I'm the Director of the Office of Global Education at Amherst. And the session tonight is very specific to study abroad to Oxford University or Cambridge University in the next academic year. And the reason that we do a special session is because studying at Oxford or Cambridge is very unique. And the deadlines for applying to these programs for next year are very early. In fact, some are coming up on us. So we'd like to do a special session for students. So Oxbridge is the name given to both Oxford University and Cambridge University. Because the style of teaching is so similar, sometimes people refer to the two institutions as Oxbridge. So if you ever hear the term Oxbridge, know that they're talking about Oxford and Cambridge jointly. Now, both the University of Oxford and the University of Cambridge are made up of many small colleges. So for example, I think Oxford has maybe 33 and Cambridge has maybe 35. And these small colleges are what make up the bigger universities. They each have their own kind of personality. Some of them only teach some subjects. Some of them only teach undergraduates. Some of them are purely graduate institutions. So it is this kind of federation of small colleges that make up each of these universities. Now, only some colleges will accept visiting students on study abroad. Not every college at Oxford or Cambridge, in fact, will take a visiting student. Now, I did try to get some students who'd been on study to Oxford or Cambridge to join us tonight. As you can imagine, we didn't have a lot of travel in the pandemic. And so those students have graduated. They were interested, but they couldn't make it tonight. So if you do want to connect to some students or you want to read evaluations, I'm going to direct you to our website. The GEO website, under students or for students, there's a section on program evaluations. And even though the evaluations there will be 1.5 years old, I still think it's going to give you a fresher student perspective to really talk about what life is like studying at Oxford or Cambridge. So a little bit about Oxford versus Cambridge. Sometimes students ask me, well, which should I go to? I mean, how do I choose? The style of teaching is very similar. At Oxford, they're called tutorials, and at Cambridge, they're called supervisions. But what this means is that a student or a very small group of students is meeting one-on-one with a faculty member or a tutor. And that tutor is sometimes a full professor, but also at times that person could be a postdoc, a PhD student, I mean, someone who has a real expertise in a particular subject. Tutorials usually meet once a week, and they're for an hour and a half. And your tutor will give you an assignment, usually a writing assignment that will require a lot of independent research and writing. And when you go to your tutorial or your supervision, you are then kind of making an oral argument about what you've, whatever your hypothesis is in your paper. This kind of style is very true for subjects in the humanities and social sciences. I think in the STEM fields, you might have a little more exam based, a little more labs and group work, but there still is this idea of very small, close, intimate tutorials where you're really getting to know your faculty very well. Now, Oxford accepts far more visiting students than Cambridge. There's only one college at Cambridge that will accept visiting students, and that's Pembroke College. Oxford, for some reason, has just been much more open. And so we by far send way more students to study at the colleges at Oxford than we do to Cambridge. Now, the academic calendar at both Oxford and Cambridge is on a trimester system. There are 3 8-week terms, and there's the Michaelmas term that runs from October to December, the Hilary term, which runs from January to March, and the Trinity term, which runs from April to June. So if you study for the full year, you'll be there from October to June. The expectation is that you're staying for the full time. If you sign up for the full year or for the spring, you are staying for the full academic year. A question sometimes comes up from students who are curious. They say, well, I know I go into mid-June, but in fact, I have an internship that starts in early June. If that's the case, I think Oxford probably isn't a good fit for you because Oxford's expectation and Cambridge's expectation is that you stay for the full duration of the program. So you can go for the full year, or you can go just for the Hillary and Trinity terms. Even though it's 2 terms at Oxford or Cambridge, we consider that a full semester. And some of the colleges at Oxford have created an early start for the fall term. As you can imagine, an 8-week term in the fall is really, really short to do it on your own, and we don't allow full credit. So you can't actually go for the single 8-week term in the fall. But some of these colleges have gotten really creative, and they know that there are a lot of US students who want to come, or students coming from US colleges and universities who want to come to Oxford or Cambridge. So what they've done is they've created this early start program where they've added on a 4-week pre-semester tutorial. So students will actually be away for a full 12 weeks and will get full credit for the semester. And we do approve those programs. There's also one option of a semesterized program, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, but the Middlebury College has a special relationship at Keble College at Oxford, where it runs on a US academic calendar, September through December or January through May. Now, when you're studying at Oxford or Cambridge, there's kind of 2 different living situations. You could live in college, which is preferred because you're living in a dormitory that's right on the campus. But Oxford and Cambridge don't have an abundance of housing. The colleges, some of them are very, very old. They weren't built to house many, many students. So there are times when students will have to live in apartments in town. And that's, some students love that. They actually really enjoy kind of being in the city center. So it is something to consider, though, if you're somebody who really wants to live in college. There are only some colleges that will permit or guarantee visiting students accommodation right on campus. And there's no shortage of student activities. In fact, Oxford and Cambridge have real traditions of student involvement in everything from the arts to politics to music to religion. I mean, you name it, and I'm confident there's going to be a student group for it. There isn't a lot of competitive sport in a varsity competition level that you'd see kind of in the US. The athletics in the United States program tends to be pretty big and pretty robust. But that's not to say there isn't a sporting atmosphere. There's very much sports teams that you can join, and you'll play against other colleges, but they aren't really kind of competing at a national level that you see in the United States. So we actually have a special relationship with New College at Oxford, and this is a really kind of interesting option we've had for about 10 years. New College doesn't actually accept a lot of visiting students. They have a small program with us, and then they have some students that come from Notre Dame, and they have I think Williams might send 1 or 2 students, Swarthmore might send 1 or 2 students. But very few are kind of visiting students are living in college. So it's a very traditional Oxford experience. There is an internal application process. You submit your materials to me. They get read by the Faculty Committee on Global Education. If they feel that your application can be passed on to New College, it is New College that will read your application and decide if you're going to be admitted. Now, New College, the name is actually a complete misnomer. It is one of the oldest colleges at Oxford, and it's very, very traditional. I think for students who want this really traditional Oxford experience, this is the perfect program for you. And what I mean by traditional is you have to be really, really independent. This isn't a program that's going to have a lot of, activities for their visiting students. They're going to treat you like any other New College student. You'll have access to all the activities that other New College students have access to, but it isn't as if there's a cohort of visiting students who have things specially organized for them. It is for the full academic year only, and you can only do subjects in your major or majors. You can't take courses that fall outside of your major. And I think this is where sometimes liberal arts students find this to be a little challenging. You're an Amherst student in an open curriculum, and you're at a liberal arts school, and you're encouraged to take courses that are unfamiliar to you. In the European system in general, students go to university and they only take coursework in their major. This idea of breadth rather than depth is, foreign. So you'll see in the UK, and in particular at Oxford, and certainly at New College, really students are only doing coursework in their major. And so the expectation that you as a visiting student will only do coursework in your major. Now, if you're a double major, you don't have to do both. You could pick one, but you couldn't say you're a math and an English major. You could do both if you wanted to, but you'd have to only study those two subjects. Maybe you decide, oh, you've made through most of your math requirements and you only want to do English. You could definitely do that. But again, you have to slot in to what's being offered at New College. There are some newer colleges at Oxford that are a little more open and kind of, working with students on their areas of interest. Again, New College is very traditional. They have a strict GPA requirement of 3.7, and they want you to be in good standing, which means that you haven't had any institutional action at the college with regard to your academic record or your disciplinary record. They have a wide range of subjects in the humanities and social sciences, and also in STEM fields. Now, at New College, you do live in college. They're actually in the process of building a new dorm, and they've said they're going to house visiting students there and other New College students. So the current dorms, they're very beautiful. They're very picturesque. I think even part of the Harry Potter film series was filmed at New College, so it has a bit of a reputation for being very beautiful. As you can imagine, some of these older buildings are a little drafty in the winter. So students often talk about how beautiful they are and how much they feel they're having this really kind of old school experience, and yet it gets a little chilly in the winter. So I think by the time I'm hoping that by next year, our students will be able to be into the new dormitories, but we're kind of waiting to see. Now, the application deadline for the next academic year, 2022-2023, for New College, not for the other schools, but just for our special relationship with New College, is on November 15th. And instructions on how to apply and application materials are in the travel registry. The reason that our deadline is so early is because New College doesn't accept a lot of students. And it isn't because some students, not every student, most students meet the requirements, but sometimes there are not tutors available at New College to actually teach students. They don't have a robust visiting student program, which means their tutors in certain subjects will only take 1 or 2 visiting students. So there are times when a student is very qualified to be at Oxford, but New College just can't make the tutor match. And therefore, you still have time to apply to another college at Oxford. And having this early deadline, you'll know much sooner if you've been admitted to New College. And then if for some reason there isn't a tutor match, you can then apply to another college at Oxford or Cambridge. If you accept the offer of admission to study at New College, we do expect that you're not going to apply to other programs because New College is going to hold those tutors for you. Now, of course, if you had a personal emergency or something really serious came up, we're not going to, hold you to it. We certainly understand that, important things happen in student lives. But the idea is that New College is going to hold those tutors for you, and you won't be applying to other programs, and that you will go if you're able to. Now, there are some other ways outside of New College. IFSA and Arcadia are 2 big US-based program providers, and they both partner with a number of colleges at Oxford. Only IFSA partners with Cambridge, and they only partner with 1 college. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Cambridge just is not as open to visiting students. So, but both have pretty robust lists of colleges at Oxford with whom they work. If you know that you want to be at Oxford or Cambridge, and you just know that you really want that style of teaching, but you're not picky about what college you go to, what I recommend is that you talk to somebody at IFSA or Arcadia and you say, okay, here are the subjects of interest to me. I really want to live in college. I have particular course requirements. What college do you think would be a good fit for me? IFSA and Arcadia have direct relationships with their colleges with whom they partner, and they can tell you, oh, I think St. Catherine is a perfect fit for you. Or, oh, I know this particular college has great STEM courses and they can offer lab. And, they know those colleges inside and out. And a conversation with them will help you find a college that's the right fit. Now, the GPAs, they all start at a 3.7. Oxford and Cambridge are very strict about the GPA requirement. They will not read, unfortunately, an application that's even like a 3.67 or a 3, 369. They're just very particular about that data point. The expectation is that you maintain a 3.7. So even if you're applying early, you'll apply probably in, January, or you'll apply in the spring, even for spring of 2023. They're just, again, the applications are really, really early. And you may or may not be asked to provide an updated transcript. I think it's something that you need to keep in mind. It's quite possible that they will ask you to provide a transcript, at the end of your sophomore year. Applications for the full year and for the fall, the early start programs, will open in January. And then for the spring of 23, they'll probably open in February and March. I think Oxford and Cambridge tend to be very popular. So I think an early application is good. Now, Middlebury has a semesterized program. And what that means is they follow the US calendar. In fact, they follow the Middlebury calendar. Their program is based at Keble College, and it's specifically designed for students who are in the social sciences and humanities. Now, this is a long-standing program. It's been with Middlebury for decades. It used to be a kind of Renaissance and medieval studies program. So students who were really interested in medieval studies, it was the perfect fit. They have completely branched out, and they have more social sciences, more humanities courses. It isn't just for students interested in Renaissance studies. So I think it's really worth a look. It's a hybrid model. So what it means is you take 2 tutorials, the traditional style of teaching, and you do 2 seminar courses that are like a Middlebury or an Amherst seminar. So it's a really nice way to dip your toe into the tutorial system, but then also have a really kind of traditional Amherst type course. The GPA requirement is a 3.5. Students live and dine at Keble, but you don't really take tutorials with Keble College students. So you're kind of, partially there. You're certainly participating in a very vibrant life at Keble College, but your classes, even your tutorials, are going to be with other Middlebury students on the Middlebury program. Now, the deadlines for the Middlebury program tend to be like every other study abroad program. They're the semester prior. So this is where we have some students who don't quite meet the 3.7, and maybe they're starting to think about study abroad in the semester prior. This is a perfect program for you because you don't have to apply as early as some of the other colleges. And that is just a very brief overview of study to Oxford and Cambridge. So what I would really love to do now is to open it up to some Q&A. So please unmute yourself, turn your video on, or just pop in the chat whatever your question is, because this is really a session for you. You may have a question about certain tutorials or a subject or living at Oxford or Cambridge. The floor is open.
Hi.
Hi.
I just had I had quite a few questions actually as you were talking. I'm looking to apply. I'm a freshman currently. I'm looking to apply in my junior year. And I was just wondering, I'm hoping to major in LJST, and I know that it's subject wise, they want you in your major or like subjects adjacent to what you're majoring in. I was wondering what that looks like for a program like LJST, which doesn't cross over perfectly.
You're right. And that's a really interesting point. I'm glad that you raised that because, in the UK, students who want, or I would say, young people who want to become lawyers, they don't go to an undergraduate first. They go straight to law school. And there are courses that will fall within the scope of the liberal arts. I think you have to be really careful if you're an LJST. We have sent LJST students to Oxford, and particularly to New College. They do have law, but you have to look at what's on offer just to make sure it's going to be a good fit for you, and then it's going to line up with what you're studying here. There are some courses that really follow, just like tort law in the UK or something very specific that wouldn't be interesting to you because you want something that has more of a liberal arts perspective, more of a social science background, not a training on how to be a lawyer in the UK. So it is possible to do it. It just means you have to look at the courses a little bit more closely. There are some other colleges that are a little more open to it. So like St. Catherine's College, they're a newer college at Oxford. They're a little more liberal artsy, in fact. So they can bend their tutorials in ways that New College won't. So I think St. Catherine's tends to be a really good fit for something like law, where a liberal arts approach to law is really different than some of the law courses that are offered at Oxford.
Okay. Would it be possible to take courses in like PPE, for example, and then just take like PPE courses, or is that too far away from?
It's too far away unless you've had significant poli-sci, economics, or philosophy. You know, if
Okay.
you've taken a few courses across that range, then you could be admitted there. But I don't think a lot of LJST courses are cross-listed with those departments.
Okay. I was also wondering for the apartments, if they're still done through the college, or if you like have to find housing separately, like in town, independently.
Yeah, so the college will always arrange it for you. They're going to make sure that you have it either in college or in an apartment. Now, Arcadia and IFSA, one of the reasons we partner with them is because they will guarantee you housing. You will always have a place to live, and they will do their best to get students to live in dorms, but it's not always possible. I mean, there is, you know, like a lot of places, it wasn't, you know, these are small colleges that were not built to house large numbers of students. So, but the Arcadia and IFSA have apartments all throughout the city, and students often live in those apartments.
Is there someone specifically at IFSA or Arcadia that you recommend we talk to if we're interested in learning more?
Yeah, actually, if you look up the website, in fact, we linked to it from the travel registry, and IFSA and Arcadia, there's a program page, and there'll be a program advisor specific to Oxford and specific to Cambridge. I can't remember who it is at Oxford and sorry, it is an Arcadia at the moment, but you could look it up easily.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I don't want to ask like so many, but I was also just wondering, and I've heard that like for exams because it's like exams there are really formal, like study abroad students don't have to take exams. I was wondering if that's true across all majors, across all colleges, or if there's like specifics.
Yeah, so for students, that's actually very true. For a normal matriculated student at Oxford or Cambridge, they will often enroll in full year courses, and they'll have end of year exams. And the Trinity term is reserved for, not for teaching, but for exams. It's different for visiting students because they know you're only there for a short time, and you're not going to do you're not taking coursework for the entire duration. You might be in a full year course, that is possible. And you might, depending on the subject, you might have an end of year exam. It's a little unusual. Often you're being assessed from term to term. So it's not out of the question to have an end of year exam, but it is unusual. Most students will have end of term papers. That's probably more common.
And finally, I was wondering for our transcripts, like what does that look like with having a trimester system? How's that crossover?
Yeah. So Oxford will, or the program provider, Arcadia or IFSA, will do the translation into US credit. So for the early start, because you're there for 12 weeks and it's full credit for us is a minimum of 15 US semester credits, or the equivalent of 4 Amherst courses. If you go for the spring, and that means the Hillary term and the Trinity term, those 2 terms, we also count that as 4 Amherst courses. If you go for the full year and just the traditional 3 trimesters, we give you 8 Amherst course equivalent for that. I know it sounds a little weird because it's like you go for the full year and it's 8 courses, but if you only go for the 2 spring terms, it's 4. You know, it's not a perfect system, but this way, you know, we're open to allowing students to go for the full year. We're open to allowing students to go for the 2 spring terms, and we're open to the fall when it has an early start program. So it's not perfect math, to be totally honest, but it does allow us our registrar is really flexible and says, you know what, if Oxford is going to award a minimum of 15 semester credits for the fall and for the spring, and then 30 for the full year, we're going to count it as such.
Okay. And does it work differently if you have the seminar, like the Middlebury seminar program versus the?
No. Okay. And because Middlebury's, in fact, in Middlebury, because it's so similar to Amherst, you know, it's like 4 Middlebury courses, which is like 4 Amherst courses, and they count each tutorial and each seminar. So that's 2 tutorials, 2 seminars. They count that as 4.
Okay, sweet. Thank you so much.
Hey, you're welcome. Are there other questions? And of course, Gabrielle, if you have other questions, you should definitely jump in, because sometimes people don't know they have them. And then you ask a question, it's like, oh, I hadn't thought about that.
I did have another one. I
Good.
was wondering, so it's a primary and a secondary tutorial. So you're taking you're taking two tutorials a trimester, is that right?
That is correct. That's typical. It does vary from subject to subject. So typically in each term, you're taking a primary and a secondary. A primary tutorial meets every week and a secondary meets every other week. So if you can imagine, I've mentioned that your meeting with your tutor is maybe an hour and a half. That's once a week. And then for secondary, it's every other week. So you can see you have these big chunks of time when you're doing reading, writing, and research. So this is really an independent. And some students have talked about it could be a little isolating at times. Like you really have to make an effort to socialize. There's so many things to do at Oxford and Cambridge, but you have to get involved, because otherwise, you know, you spend so much of your time in the library, in your room reading, going to lectures at the university that your tutor has assigned to you. You really have to kind of get out. And there's a very, very robust social life at Oxford and Cambridge. So it's important to take advantage of that.
I have a friend that's actually a STEM major, and she's also interested in the program. And I was wondering how like labs work for that.
Yeah, there isn't as much lab space. I think students who go for the full year tend to do much better with the labs or the spring, because you're there longer. You know, Oxford and Cambridge do admit STEM students, but they admit a smaller number because, you know, labs, there's always a limit to lab space. And I think they, you know, obviously are giving priority to the matriculated students, but they will accept visiting students into those courses. If students have, you know, I think what's important to note is that you need to kind of slot in to what's available. So if you go to New College's website and you look to see what courses are in the second year, so this is something to note as well. Oxford and Cambridge are 3-year university degrees, not 4. So when you study at Oxford or Cambridge, you're actually taking courses that are at the second year level, and that's perfectly fine. It's exactly where you should be. So you can actually go online and take a look and see, okay, what's on offer at, you know, at the second year. Look at the courses, try to see, is that something that you would take? Because that's what you're going to have to channel into.
Since I'm applying as a junior, I was wondering if you know if it would be like relatively consistent, the course offerings, or
Yes.
if it really just changes.
I mean, it varies a little bit, but not a lot. It's like Amherst, you know, they'll have new tutors come on, new faculty come on, new courses are offered, but for the most part, the curriculum stays relatively the same. And especially like if you're going to be applying a year from now, it's not going to change dramatically. There are times when particular tutors actually go on leave. And they're much smaller college, like New College. This happens at New College. Again, this is why it's a good example of why we have our application deadline early. You know, this year they can't take anybody in biochemistry because their biochem tutor is on leave, and there's only one biochem tutor because New College is so small, so they can't take anybody in biochemistry. So all of our biochem students who are interested in New College, they're going to have to go to apply to other colleges at Oxford.
Okay. And do you ever take courses outside? Everything's housed in the college, right? So you're not taking, or are there lectures outside of the college? Or?
Yeah, so the university actually organizes lectures, and then the colleges and their own kind of courses will assign lectures based on the subject. So you might be at New College, but you could very well be taking a lecture at St. Catherine's or Hertford College or Teddy Hall. It's very possible. You know, you'll get us kind of assignments for the university lectures. On occasion, there will be a tutor from outside your college that will instruct you, but it doesn't happen that often.
Okay.
I would say St. Catherine's College is a little bit more, I would say kind of progressive in a way. They've just kind of signed on to a newer way of kind of teaching, and they're not afraid to go outside of St. Catherine's to get tutors to teach visiting students. They have a very big visiting student program. So they're probably the most liberal artsy of all the colleges at Oxford.
Is that a full year or a semester?
So that's a full year and spring. Now they did do a pre-semester early start program this fall. I don't know if they're going to keep it. They did it because of the pandemic, but I don't know if they're going to keep it. They might. We'll see. Maybe you'll know by, I would say by the spring, whether they're going to have an early start program.
Okay. And I was also wondering about the visa process. Like, how does that work? Do we go partially through the Global Studies Office? Like, yeah.
So if you study for the full year, you definitely have to have a visa. If you study for just under 6 months or under, you actually don't need to go through the visa process. As long as you have your admission letter, you can kind of get the student visa stamped in your passport at the airport when you go through immigration for the first time. So if you're going for the fall or the spring, you actually don't need to apply for the visa in advance. If you go for the full year, you do. You cannot apply for the visa until you've been admitted to your program and you get what's called a confirmation CAS number, something confirmation of studies. I forget actually what these stands for. I'm always gonna call it a CAS number. So you have to get your CAS number, which the UK government gives you, and they give it to New College, and New College gives it to you. So once you have that CAS number, you can then apply for your visa, but you'll have plenty of time to apply for that. And most students who are going for the full year do it over the summer, but that's an important thing to know. If you have plans to travel over the summer, it might be difficult. You're going to need to kind of send your passport into the UK consulate in order to, with your supporting documents in order to get the student visa. So usually if you're going to travel, we tell students not to travel in late July and August, so you have time to apply for your visa.
Okay. Well, I think I'm out of questions.
Anybody else? Do you have questions? Well, I'm going to put my email in the chat. You can also find it on the Amherst website really easily. But please do be in touch with me if you have questions. That New College application is going to be due in mid-November, November 15th. So please do let me know if you are thinking about it, or you want to talk more specifically about New College. Definitely let me know. And thank you so much for coming tonight. I know it's in the middle of midterm, so everyone's really busy. But I also hope you have a great fall break. It's right around the corner. I can't believe the midpoint is here. So have a good night, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Bye.